Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me so much pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of India Habitat Center and Professor Benoy K Behl. Today's talk is the 44th in his monthly series, Glimpses of Culture. In the words of Mr. Chris Sloan, a former director of National Geographic magazine, Benoy K Behl is a filmmaker, art historian, and photographer whose work has brought India's rich heritage into the spotlight for decades. Benoy has spent years exploring and documenting ancient Hindu and Buddhist art. His camera has captured over 50,000 images of monuments, from the intricate cave temples of Ajanta and Ellora to the stunning sculptures at Badami and Lepakshi, revealing details that many have never seen before. Using innovative low light techniques, Benoy has photographed the vivid Buddhist paintings of Ajanta without using a flash, a method that preserves their natural beauty. His work has been featured in magazines like National Geographic and has helped shape our understanding of Asian art history. Benoy's photographs do more than record historical sites. They tell the story of a living tradition and the cultural spirit behind these masterpieces. Whether he's roaming ancient ruins or bustling modern cities, Benoy K. Behl's passion for art and history shines through his work. His friendly, inquisitive approach has made him a trusted voice in the world of art documentation, inspiring many to appreciate the beauty of Hindu and Buddhist art. Today, in our journey through the history of Indian art, Professor Behl takes us to the 12th and 13th century Hoysala temples of Karnataka. We will see how the art has evolved from the ancient period till now. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Benoy K. Behl will speak to us about filigree in stone Hoysala temples. I thank you for your attention, and over to Professor Behl now.
Thank you very much, Sujata Chatterji. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My many thanks to India Habitat Center for this yet again opportunity to present another beautiful chapter from the cultural history of this subcontinent. My many thanks to Doordarshan, who, living up to their tradition of being a public service broadcaster, have so kindly sponsored the making of my deeply researched films. In a world which is so commercially driven, it is indeed exemplary that Doordarshan have sponsored these extremely serious films. Ladies and gentlemen, over the centuries, the purpose of Indian art and temples has been constant. On the one hand, it is to provide us a sanctum where we may go far from the noise and clamor of the material world, to meditate in silence and in peace, and to eventually hope to gain knowledge of the formless eternal. And on the other hand, before we enter this sanctum, on the walls outside, we are provided a view of the forms of the world, the many, many fruits and temptations which the world has to offer us. So we see these and we recognize them as part of the world we live in, and we know what we are leaving behind in our choice to meditate upon that which is beyond, that which is formless. Now, while the purpose of the art has been constant, the manner of the presentation of the art has changed and evolved over the centuries. In the BC period, in the Shunga period, the figures of the art were very gentle. These provided us a very individualistic uh, touch for the devotee to look upon these figures made with extreme gentleness and compassion, a gentleness which would melt away our egos and would help us to realize our oneness with all that there is. So it was a world of infinite grace and gentleness which was created by the art of that period. From there, as we come into the beginning of the Christian era, or the common era, we have the figures such as those at the great stupa of Sanchi and at Amravati. We have the figures presented in a world of in an urban and urbane environment, extremely sophisticated figures who remind us of the fact that this was an era and this was a world which was trading enormously with Rome, with Southeast Asia, and there was this bustling urban culture which had developed. So you have the figures interacting with many others. You have urban settings of buildings, and in all this milieu is presented the art. From there, we move on to the 4th and 5th centuries, and we see the use of the beauty of form, a remarkable use of the beauty of form to, in fact, use this grace and beauty of form to take us away from the world of forms. A marvelous grace, a great challenge for the artist to use the material form to take us, to help us transcend the form itself, to eventually realize that same formless eternal. And therefore, you also have this inward look in the art, a wonderful inward look which becomes the hallmark of the finest art of Asia, a remarkable inward look that takes us deep inside ourselves. We move on from there, and by the 7th, 8th century, the rulers for the first time start directly patronizing the temples. Earlier, all the temples, all the stupas, as we have discussed so many times before, were sponsored by the people. It was the common people who each individually gave donations for small parts of the temple or the stupa really. And together, it came together. And the guilds created these wonderful ancient structures of India. So by the 7th, 8th century, the kings have started directly patronizing the temples, and a sense of royal grandeur begins to come into the art. This grandeur increases, and by the time of the end of the 10th century, you find large temples, some very large temples, such as the great Barhadishvara temple at Tanjavur, such as the Lingaraja temple in Odisha, such as the temples of Khajuraho. And by now, the purpose of the temples is not only to show us the divinity which underlies it all, but at the same time, it is also beginning to show us the grandeur and the court of the kings who are behind the patronage of these temples. So the purpose of the art is gradually changing, and this regal grandeur is coming into the art. And today we are now coming to the 12th century, to the Hoysala temples. By now in the 12th century, not only are the depictions of the grandeur of the royal court coming into the coming into depiction in the art, but you also see the depiction of military might. We start seeing soldiers and others, which were earlier not seen in the art. So we have watched now the transition from the earliest and gentlest and simplest of forms, uh, gentlest depictions of the world around us, to this period of time when the temple begins to unfold before us, the grandeur of the kings and the court, and now the importance of the military might is also coming in. And during this period, you also find there is regional variation in the types of figures which are made. And here in the Hoysala period, you see a great deal of emphasis on decoration. It is not only the grace within which is being portrayed, but decoration showing us the grandeur, showing us the fineness of the regal courts, showing us the jewelry, showing us the uh, crowns, showing us so much more is beginning to be seen. And the art itself is extremely decorative. So that is a change in the depiction in the temples. So with this, I request Sunil to please run the film, and I will come back to you to take your questions also after the screening. Thank you so much.
In the 11th and 12th centuries, in north and central India, great temples were being made in the Nagara style. The Dravid or South Indian style prevailed in magnificent temples which were being constructed in Tamil Nadu. In the Deccan, which lay in between North and South India, hill chieftains named the Hoysalas were gradually coming into power and creating a kingdom in southern Karnataka. Hoysala history is clear from the time of Vishnu Vardhana, who ruled from 1108 to 1142. Inscriptions show that the king, his wife, and his ministers were generous patrons of temples. King Vishnu Vardhana defeated the imperial Cholas in 1116. This was a landmark in the establishment of his dynasty. To commemorate his victory, he built the temple of Keshava or Chennakeshava at Belur in present-day Karnataka. He named it the Vijay Narayana or the victorious Vishnu. The temple is a classic example of the ornate style of temple art under the Hoysalas. They inherited a rich tradition of temple building from the dynasties before them, the Chalukyas and the Cholas. The Chalukyas had made magnificent temples at Pattadakkal in the 8th century and at other sites. Further south, the Cholas had created great temples in the region of Tamil Nadu. The Hoysalas borrowed freely from both traditions and created a style which is a rich blend of northern and southern influences.
Vishnuvardhana, who was a subordinate of the Chalukyan ruler, who fought endlessly against the Chalukyas in the Chalukyan territory and nearly won most of the battles, felt at the end probably that while he could rebuild an empire which was earlier was the monopoly of the Chalukyas, whether he would be able to rebuild the kind of an empire which they had built up in terms of decorating his entire landscape with beautiful temples. That was the question. He didn't want to appropriate the territory, but he wanted to appropriate their cultural skill also. their culture also, their art also. So during the long marches that he had in the Chalukyan territory, he could not help but wonder at the marvelous temples there. So when he ascertained his power, independence, and he established a new capital, the first thing that happened to him was to create something which the Chalukyas had created in his own empire.
The Keshava Temple, dedicated in 1117, stands in a large courtyard. It has a pillared mandapa or hall, an antechamber and a shrine. It rests on a plinth which follows the shape of the temple itself. The shikhara or tower of the temple is no longer there, which gives a flat appearance to the structure today. The mandapa would originally have been a pillared open hall. The later Hoysala king, Balala II, added carved window screens. These give the mandapa a more closed feeling now. Such screens continue the tradition of Western Chalukyan temples in the Deccan, such as the Lad Khan in Aihole. The exterior of the temple is more profusely sculpted than ever before, in a manner which has come to be known as the ornate Hoysala style. Horizontal rows of carvings run around the temple in an ordered and highly organized design. Every inch of wall surface is sculpted, often in miniaturized detail. The temple has the richest surface texture seen in any in India. The bands of carving which go around the structure run for over 700 feet. The elephants we see below number about 2,000. The exterior walls present the world of forms, the material universe we perceive around us. Here, at the temple, the world is seen in its true perspective. It is seen as a manifestation of the truth beyond, which is in the Garbhagriha or womb chamber, deep inside the temple. The Hoysala artist paid the greatest attention to detail. Every limb of each figure, every decorative design shows this preoccupation. There appears to be a limitless devotion and time which the sculptor must have put into his laborious work. Every unit of work is remarkable in its intricacy of design, depth of detail, and skillful craftsmanship. However, the sense of fluid movement and balance to be found in other contemporaneous Indian sculpture is not here. The figures and decorative motifs are deeply undercut and stand out most effectively against dark shadows. The best-known sculptures here are of the Madanakais, the bracket figures, beneath the overhanging roof of the mandapa. Bracket figures are also a theme which continue from the art of the Western Chalukyas of the Deccan. These are Nayakas or beautiful women who are seen in Indic art from early times. They represent the fertile abundance of nature. The fullness of the figures and ornamentation is somewhat similar to the idiom of nearby Kerala. The sculptures are a celebration of beauty. The depiction of youthful maidens is considered by medieval texts to be an essential ornament of temples. Of all the themes presented by the Hoysala artists, dance appears to be the most favored. We see men and women dancing, with and without musical instruments. Almost all the deities are also seen in dance postures here. This is a celebration of the beauty and possibilities of the human form, which is here imaged as divine. The emblem of the Hoysala dynasty is a man killing a lion. This is based upon the story of Sala, who was a tribal. He saved a meditating Jain sadhu by killing a lion who was about to pounce on him. With the blessings of the sadhu began the rise to power of Sala and the Hoysala dynasty he founded. To create the images in such detail, the artists used an appropriate stone. When quarried, chloritic schist is extremely soft and easy to cut. It becomes harder and long-lasting with exposure to air over a period of time. The softness of the stone made it possible for the sculptor to chisel the minutest details. The interior of the temple is as richly adorned as the outer walls. Each of the pillars of the mandapa or hall is finely sculpted. Some have figures made upon them, while other pillars are so smoothly chiseled that they appear to be lathe-turned. There is a central ceiling panel which is also carved in great detail. This is in keeping with the tradition of sculpted ceilings in North Indian temples. There are bracket figures of beautiful women at each corner of the central bay of the mandapa. One of the finest sculptures here is a pillar image. The fluidity of lines and the subtleties of body posture are remarkable. There is far less ornamentation, and the figure shows a close relationship with the Chola idiom. Many finely carved temples stand in the present-day village of Halabid, which was the grand capital of the Hoysalas, known then as Dora Samudra. Built between 1121 and 1160, the profusely decorated temple of Hoysaleshwara is the most prominent structure here. In the words of historian Percy Brown, it is, without exaggeration, one of the most remarkable monuments ever produced by the hand of man. The Hoysaleshwara temple has two separate but connected shrines made on a single platform. As in the case of the Chennakeshava Temple, the towers or vimanas are missing, which gives a low and flat appearance to the temple. Like the previous temple, the Hoysaleshwara is profusely and intricately carved. There is no effort spared in creating a world of fine details and ornamentation. It is as if no labor is too great in attempting to show the glory of the manifestation of the divine. Perhaps the splendor of ornamentation also reflects the tastes of the Hoysalas, who were originally hill chieftains. It is certainly very different from the simpler and graceful forms made under the Chalukyas and the Cholas. Miniature vimanas and grand dwarapalas are made at the entrances to the shrines. The carving is dazzling in its minute work and wealth of detail. The dwarapalas stand in swaying postures and are heavy in the fulsome portrayal of the life force of nature. Past them, we come into the spacious interior of the temple. The polished and carved pillars are reminiscent of the earlier temple at Belur. The ceilings are again richly carved. The exterior of the temple, as in other Indic temples, provides a view of the world of separated forms that we perceive around us. Here they are seen as a manifestation of the deity enshrined in the Garbhagriha. In its wealth of detail, this is a highly ordered presentation of the numerous shapes in which we see the formless divine. In all these, our attention is drawn to the beauty and grace which underlies everything that exists. The deities are manifestations of philosophic concepts and the fine qualities within us. In response to their beauty, we are to be transported away from worldly cares, our thoughts taken to the divine which pervades it all. What strikes us most in ancient Indian art is that though deities, animals, plants, and common people are made, there are no portraits of kings or other specific individuals. Of course, for a brief while, these come in during the rule of the Kushanas, who hailed from faraway China. In this late period of the 12th century, in some schools of art, such as this, there are still no portraits of kings. In Indic belief, it is the ego which is the main source of all pain and confusion in the world. The object of art is to help us to realize the oneness and divinity of all of existence. However, by this period and more so, in this school of art, a change has occurred. Artists who preferred earlier to remain anonymous have inscribed their names with pride upon their works. However, a stylistic analysis shows that we cannot distinguish the work of one artist from another. As in earlier Indic schools of art, it is a collective style rather than individual ones. The region had a tradition of ivory and sandalwood carving, which continues till today. Hoysala sculpture was probably influenced by this form of miniature art. The lowest section of the temple wall has rows of reliefs of animals and birds. Elephants stand for stability and power and have traditionally been made at the base of the temple as if to hold it up. Lions symbolize the courage within us, with which we must face the confusion and turmoil of the material world. The care and patience of the artist is seen in the fact that no two lions are alike in the relief, which runs for 700 feet.
The imagery on the Hoysala temples in this sort of, this schist, this sharp stone that captures in miniature form so much precision of detail, is one of the wonders of the history of Indian art. And the range of figures and animals that we find in horizontal reliefs as well as on panels is perhaps unparalleled throughout the whole temple architecture of India. But in the 12th and the 13th century in this part of Karnataka, we have this extraordinary range of imagery. Some scholars have studied the representations of Ramayana and Mahabharata on the great temples at Halebid and Belur and Somnathpur and other lesser known temples, but equally fine artistically. Other scholars have studied, for example, the representations of machinery for war, all the trappings of the elephants and the horses, the chariots, the weapons which the soldiers are carrying, the costumes that they wear, their shields, their helmets, the stirrups that are on the horses. All sorts of extraordinary details are there for us to study, and some of these have already been recorded, examined and studied. And we begin to ask, how is it that these artists in this particular milieu, for these patrons, were particularly concerned to record all these things, which perhaps they weren't in other environments? Again, this is something we don't understand. Why is it that artists working for a Hoysala king in the 12th century in central Karnataka should be concerned to show these things, but an artist working for a king in Tamil Nadu in the 9th century should not? Is something we can only speculate. But there is something to do with the 12th and 13th century. Its very great emphasis on military aspects and on war and on the representations of military aspects. That is, I think, a general feature of Indian art. If we compare the reliefs on the Hoysala temples with those at Konarak, let's say, in the 13th century, we see a similar obsession with showing the paraphernalia of kingship in a military guise, and that the temple is a place where this has to be shown. Because obviously the king, as a military leader, as somebody who commands these forces, is extremely important for the worship of gods.
Above, practically the whole Hindu pantheon is depicted, with an emphasis on the forms of Shiva. Scenes from the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the main episodes of the Bhagavata Purana are also made on the walls. At Halabid are also finely sculpted temples made to the Jaina Tirthankaras. In keeping with Indic traditions, there were no barriers between the patronage of the temples of the different paths towards realization. Many queens and generals of the Hoysalas were Jainas. The Chennakeshava Temple at Somnathpur was made in 1268. The Vimana of the temple survives and gives us an idea of how the modest-sized towers of Hoysala times would have looked. Rather than impressive height, the emphasis remains on profuse sculptural decoration. The three shrines of the temple have almost human-sized figures of Vishnu in different forms. As Venugopala, he is seen in his incarnation as Krishna playing the flute. The Hoysala temples mark one of the most exuberant periods of Indian art. The artists of this time must have been among the most assiduous in their detailed work and most prolific in their output. It is the stylization in Indian art which is marked here, with less of the naturalism which was also seen before. While every fingernail is carved, the breath of life which animates much of Indian sculpture has given way to profuse ornamentation. An ornamentation which displays the grandeur of the Hoysala court and empire.
Indeed, this is this is the most profusely decorated group of temples in the art history of India. This is a period of time in which the marvelous detail, the miniaturized detail, the emphasis on the beauty of detail itself, every fingernail being made, every bit of every ornamentation being made, has reached a peak of skill and perfection. And the figures are made heavy with the fruitfulness of the earth, the force which conveys which is responsible for the continuance of life, is seen represented in the sway and the weight of the figures, and the fruits of the earth, the ornamentation, the beauty is well spread before our eyes. Of course, as always, it is the challenge for the Indian artist to show us so much beauty and so much grace, but with the purpose always of helping us to realize that all this grace in the world, all this beauty of the world, is only part of the Maya or Mithya, the illusory nature of the world. And the purpose of the art is to help us to see the grace which is beyond. And by the medieval period, the artist is not left to his own traditions as was in the ancient period, when the art was patronized by the common people and the guilds had their own tradition to follow and their own manner of following it, their own themes and the presentation according to their traditions. By now, the kings have also come into it, and the grandeur of kings is also to be expressed. So the challenge for the artist is even more to concentrate upon taking us beyond the beauty of the world, yet at the same time to fulfill the needs of his patrons, the kings. It is a constantly evolving tradition and constantly evolving forms which come before us. At this point, I will request Sujata to please read out to me any questions which you may be putting in the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer.
Yes. Before that, I'll take this opportunity to announce our next screening, which would be on a Saturday at 6 p.m. The date would be 21st June, so please mark that. And this film is going to be The Imperial City of Vijayanagara. The film is about one of the most glorious cities of the medieval period. We'd love for all of you to be with us, so please mark the date. That's 21st June. It would be a Saturday as always, and at 6 p.m. Dr. Geeta Badikidaya, a mention was made that the Madanikas resemble the women of Kerala, but they look like beautiful tribal women of that area during that period. Can you clarify, Professor Benoy?
Thank you very much, Geeta. Uh, yes, what was actually said was that the forms are heavier and they resemble the artistic representation in the temples of Kerala. So it is not the women of Kerala really, but the stylistic representation in Kerala, which was mentioned here. Thank you very much.
Raj, does the statement the Vimana is missing imply it was never there, or does it imply it may have collapsed over the centuries?
Thank you, Raj. Unfortunately, the Vimanas have collapsed over the centuries, except for the Vimana you saw of the temple at Somnath. Thank you.
Dr. Geeta Badikidaya, there are 12 yakshas on the western side of Somnath Keshava Temple holding various instruments. This is a very special feature not seen in other Hoysala temples. What is the significance?
I'm afraid I'm not able to specifically answer that here. Thank you.
Krishna Budle, such a beautiful, intricate sculpting full of life.
Yes, Krishna, isn't it? Thank you very much. It is really a very special period in Indian art.
Rajendra Khimesra, excellent, awesome.
Thank you, Rajendra.
Sharda, thank you, Professor Benoy Behl. It was wonderful to see this again, capturing the intricacy and grandeur of Hoysala art, and also to hear late Professor Setter, who was with Nias with many years and worked a lot on the Hoysalas. Professor Sharda Srinivasan, Nias.
Thank you very much, Sharda. Yes, indeed. It was always a pleasure to meet Dr. Shetter too. I remember when I was invited by yourself to give a lecture at NIAS. Dr. Shetter was chairing the talk, and he was always such a knowledgeable and such a passionate person. Thank you so much.
Rajendra Khimesra, how many artists were employed? How many years did it take to complete this grand temple?
Um, Thank you. I'm afraid we do not know exactly how many artists were employed. There were a number of artists, is what we know, and we have the names of some of them. And of course, as we observe, the style of art is a collective style. You cannot make out the difference uh, between the work of one artist and another. So the collective style of the guild is still in place. This is a change from the ancient period that the names are beginning to have begun to be mentioned. But nobody is trying for an individualistic style of his own. They're still keeping within the norms of the collective style. And I'm afraid we do not really know exactly how long each temple would have taken to be made. Thank you very much.
Dr. Shivarama V, an excellent window to the beautiful architecture of Belur and Halibut, Professor Behl. Thanks and regards.
Thank you. It is fascinating to see the art of nearby Pattadakal, to see the art of the Cholas further to the south, and to see these Hoysala temples. It is all such a beautiful and rich milieu. It is the same purpose of the art, the same themes of the art, the same forms of representation, and yet so infinitely varied and so different, and the artists are so individual in their expression. Such a marvelous thing. I'm so happy to have shared this. Thank you.
Pranav Sharma, my question is regarding the manifestation of complex metaphysical philosophical concepts such as Shita, Atman, Brahman. Can you please elaborate on how the artists of temples have suggested such complex concepts in contrast to direct iconographical depictions like lion as courage and elephant as stability?
Yes, as we have been pointing out in the series of talks, we have seen how each deity is a absolutely marvelous personification of concepts and qualities, and these are put together so beautifully to convey uh, the different aspects of the divine, and finally to take us, in fact, from there to beyond, to have the deities before us, which is the which is a formful presentation of divinity. the Rupa, and yet to take us beyond to the Arupa, to the Nirakar. And that is the final journey to be able to realize the Nirgun, the Nirakar, the Arupa. So this is something that we have been constantly referring to, and different parts of the tradition have been examined in detail during the course of these talks. And once again, I reiterate that the idea is to present us all the forms of the world around us, the world of forms, the Maya, the Mithya that we live with on a day-to-day basis, the fruits and temptations of the earth that reach out for our hearts constantly and keep us so absorbed in the material world, and yet to finally take us beyond to that which is, in fact, we travel on this journey through the deities to go to that which is finally the Nirakar. Thank you.
Dr. Preeti Swaraj, a very good evening, sir. Is it possible to provide a recording of previous lectures?
Yes, it is my pleasure. In fact, the YouTube channel after my name, Benoy Behl, has recordings of many previous lectures. We find excerpts from films and lectures, probably well over 100 of them. So kindly do look there. The channel is called after my name, Benoy Behl. Thank you.
Rajendra Khimesra, see you once again at Bangkok in the near future.
Thank you. I look forward very much to that. It's always such a pleasure to meet you.
Ashima, I always appreciate and admire your work.
Very kind of you to say that. It is a joy to share the beauty of this art, to share the journey which is expressed through this art. It is my joy. Thank you.
Adhya, good evening, sir. What initially inspired your exploration and documentation of the Hoysala temples? And during your research, what was the most unexpected or revealing insight you encountered about their art or cultural context? Thank you.
Thank you. This has been a part of my documentation of the temples and sculpture and paintings which are spread across the length and breadth of the subcontinent and across the continents of Asia, where these traditions have spread so beautifully and are maintained so beautifully. So this has been a part of that, and each each period of art has unfolded and revealed its own treasures. So here again, it was revealed as so different yet the same. And I particularly note that here the artist is presenting so much detailed decorative work that in many ways it is difficult for him to present the grace which goes beyond it all, the essential and simple grace. And yet he manages to do that. So it's remarkable work, and perhaps that is what impresses me most of all in these temples. Thank you.
Dr. Preeti Swaraj, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Hira Ballav Joshi, do we have any structure which has similar rigors in north part of India? Thank you.
This kind of decoration, uh, no, not really. This is a pretty unique kind of decoration. Infinitely detailed, infinitely detailed. Of course, you have decoration of other kinds. You have the joyousness of Kashmir, the temples and Buddhist art of Kashmir. You have the joyousness of the art of Himachal. You have the beauty of the art of especially the early art of Rajasthan. You have so much in North India, but that is the beauty. Each place has its own regional variation to offer, even though the purpose and much of it, the theme is the same. Thank you.
Ashima, I am myself from a photographer family.
Very happy to know that.
Godan, thank you very much again, Professor Behl, for bringing the beauty so vividly. Wonderful.
Thank you, Godan. It's a pleasure to share this. Thank you.
I think that's about it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it was a great pleasure to be with all of you, and Sujata and I look forward to again meeting you in the month of June. And my many thanks to India Habitat Center again for this wonderful opportunity, and to Sunil for an excellent screening. Thank you very much.